Hello everyone, I am Tatiana, an eternally exhausted artist from Spain. Welcome or welcome back to my channel, where I share parts of my art journey with you. In today's video, I'll be showing you how I painted the portrait of my current special interest, Louis de Pointe Du Lac from the TV series Interview with a Vampire, played by the very talented Jacob Anderson. You might recognize him from Game of Thrones, where he played Grey Worm, the commander of the Unsullied. There is a new film with him called Time Stalker that came out this month, which I'm excited to watch. The series Interview with a Vampire came out 2 years ago, but I only recently watched it, and I instantly got hooked. As the title suggests, it is based on Anne Rice's famous book Interview with a Vampire, but more on that later. Let's talk about the painting now. First, I start with an initial sketch of Louis' face, so I could study it and get more familiar with the shapes and features. I used my large sketchbook, so I could also have the size approximation for the final piece. I am not very good at drawing people, which is why this process took quite a long time. But I was determined to get it right. There is no way I would leave my dear Louis looking wonky. Once I have the sketch done, I do a second loose sketch on watercolor paper. I do not worry about getting it perfect, as it is more a guide to help me decide the color scheme that works best. This will not be the end piece. Then, on a separate piece of paper, I start mixing the colors that I have in mind to see which ones go together and how much of each paint I want to use. And whilst doing this, I will also start applying the colors to my loose sketch. I will modify on the go. Perhaps this area needs more blue, or that one has too much purple. This has now become quite intuitive for me, so it's not easy to explain exactly how I decide which one is right. I figure it out as I go. Whenever I get custom requests for pet portraits or other more figurative style of paintings, I follow this exact process. First, initial sketch that will lead to the proper sketch, and then loose sketches to decide the color scheme. And I will often do more than one loose sketch if I'm not happy with the initial color scheme that I had chosen. This process also helps me figure out where the light and the shadows are located. It is crucial to get this part right, because it can make or break the painting. I'm looking at my painting, and I don't think I am too keen on the colors I've chosen for the portrait. They are too cold, too dead. The original picture is quite warm, but from the get-go I decided to go in a cooler direction. I still want to do it though, but I'll have to come up with another solution. Louis is a human vampire after all, not the Night King. Okay, it is now time to do the real painting. I transfer the final sketch onto my watercolor paper, and then fine-tune those details that I didn't get quite right the first time before I can start painting. I wasn't too convinced with the color palette I chose for the rough painting, so I decided to change it. One of my favorite color combos is yellow ochre and indigo. I find they complement each other very well. The coolness of the indigo with the warmth of the ochre. I don't know how to explain it, but it makes me think of imaginary landscapes in my head that are peaceful and beautiful. After doing the first dainty layers on the skin, I do a few passes to the background. I work more on it afterwards as well. Since the subject is already going to be quite tight, I am leaving the background quite loose, so as to keep Louis's face as the main focal point. I'm noticing now that I would have benefited from using a bigger brush. You've probably noticed that I tend to be quite careful when painting, and my teacher has told me this many times. I tend to use not enough pigment, and I also tend to use small brushes. My reasoning is that as long as the layer is faint and light, I can always cover it up with a thicker layer if I don't like how it's turning out. Of course, this doesn't always work, and it's possible that it is holding me back. But it's the way I learn, being careful and going slowly before I can run. As I was mixing the ochre with the indigo, I realized I would have to add some burnt umber to counteract the greenness I was getting. Depending on the area that I'm painting, I will add either more of the burnt umber to get a warmer tone or more indigo to cool it down. I like how the colors are working and creating harmony. So it's now time to go deeper into those layers, building contrast, to start giving the painting shape with the shadows. I apply a few more layers on the face, and then with a very fine brush, I work on the details around the nose and the mouth. In the film of An Interview with a Vampire, which is based on the book by Anne Rice, the story begins around the late 1700s. The character of Louis de Pointe Du Lac is a French immigrant and owner of a plantation. Whilst in the series, Louis is a black Creole, a well-off owner of a brothel, and his story takes place in the early 1900s. This little, in quotations, detail changes the whole story, making it much more interesting and complex, and in my opinion, even better. It deals with racial issues, as well as sexuality and abuse. Add to this the superb acting of the whole cast, and you have, in my opinion, a show that is deep, relatable, and I know that I'll be pining for it throughout the rest of the year. Man, even writing that is bringing tears to my eyes. And even the other main characters, Lestat and Claudia, are much more complex and likable. Lestat gives you this love-hate vibe that is closer to the novel than in the film, and I found Claudia not to be as annoying as the one portrayed in film. You also get to see Louis and Claudia's travels into the old continent in search for fellow vampires like them. Have any of you watched it yet, and did you like it? Let me know what you thought. I'd be very, very interested to know. And also, for those of you who might not know this fact, the actor Jacob Anderson is also a musician who goes by the name of Raleigh Ritchie. And of course, I'm in love with his music. So during this time, I've been able to feed my current obsession, not just by rewatching the series as well as the film, but also by listening to his songs daily. Now back to the painting. Now, I chose this picture of Louis because of the angle of his face, how the light and the shadow are playing on his features and on the eyes, and particularly his gaze. For me, it perfectly conveys Louis de Pointe du Lac's aura and personality, so I had to make sure his eyes came out right. But this is also why I struggled here. You will notice there are two things happening here. The eyes are covered in the shadows, but because they are very light in color and his pupils are small, there's a brightness going around them, almost as if his eyes were lit from within. So instead of a light wash of indigo, I decided to use cerulean blue instead. This way, I'll be able to keep the iris light, and I can always adjust the contrast by adding more indigo. It is a magical contrast that I am finding very hard to convey, and I'm not totally sure I made them justice. Now that the eyes are done, I decide to apply a few more layers around the rest of his face, shirt, and hand, and then leave it at that. I've been staring at it for too long, and I can't really see it properly anymore. Hello again. It has been a week since I last worked on Louis's painting, and now with fresh eyes, I can finally get back to it. I find it's good practice to let your artwork sit for a few days, to let it stew, so to speak. And then when you come back, you do it with renewed energy and are able to see things better. In my case, I noticed that there were some shadows missing and that the painting overall was lacking contrast. As I mentioned at the beginning of my video, I have been obsessed with Louis, or Jacob, Raleigh Ritchie during this time, which is what made me take the leap of trying to paint him. Honestly, I didn't think it would come out the way it did. I thought it was going to be worse. I know the final painting is not perfect, but this does not diminish my joy during the whole painting process and the satisfaction of seeing it finished. And with that said, it is now time to end this video. Let me know in the comments if you're also a fan of Jacob Anderson / Raleigh Ritchie, or your thoughts on the Interview with a Vampire series. As for me, I'll be hanging this painting in a cherished spot in my home and rewatching the series for a third time. So, thank you so much for watching, for keeping me company during this journey, and I wish you a restful weekend. Till next time, bye for now.